Hi, and welcome to Campus Mortgage, the mortgage industry's leading provider of underwriting, processing, quality control, servicing, and closing training. Before we get started, please take a moment to read Campus Mortgage's disclaimer and keep in mind the information contained in this video is time sensitive and subject to change without notice. Now let's get started. Today, we will be discussing part 3 of a 3-part video series which covers processing properties located in disaster areas. Previously, we identified when an appraiser must re-inspect a property. But what happens when an appraisal was never required? Let's talk about property inspection waivers, also known as appraisal waivers. So, if you have a loan in process and a disaster strikes that impacts that lending area, an appraisal waiver likely can no longer be exercised. So you may have had a loan approval that stated an appraisal waiver was eligible, but if a disaster strikes and that loan has not closed, the lender may come back and say an appraisal waiver cannot be exercised and a full appraisal report would be required. So in this instance, it would be an appraisal report being completed after the disaster struck. So that would take the place of any reinspection that a lender may have or require when a property is located in a disaster area. However, if a lender has a closed loan and then the disaster strikes, so they've closed the loan but they have not yet delivered it to an agency or sold it on the secondary market, in that instance, they may come back and require a property inspection to be completed in order to deliver that loan. Because remember, the lender has to be able to warrant that that property is free from damage when they deliver the loan. So if the loan is closed and then that disaster strikes, then a property inspector will need to go out to warrant that there is no damage, and again, the property is still eligible for delivery. In that instance, it does not necessarily have to be an appraisal or an appraiser going out. It could just be a licensed property inspector that can go out and do a disaster certification for that lender. Now that we've talked about the different appraisal or property inspections that may be needed, let's talk about some additional guideline flexibilities that Fannie Mae has published that they would allow in order to accommodate borrowers who may have been impacted by a disaster. So if the property is located in certain presidentially declared disaster areas, so remember that's when you want to check that FEMA website and make sure that it is a presidentially declared disaster area, Fannie Mae offers these additional flexibilities. The underwriting documentation in your loan, which consists of your credit report, income documentation, or asset documentation, and this also includes your appraisal reports. Any of that underwriting documentation, Fannie Mae will allow the expiration date to be extended from the standard 120 days and to extend it out into 180 days. So if you have some documentation that was coming up close to their expiration date and that disaster struck, Fannie Mae says those borrowers have a lot on their plate already. We'll go ahead and accept a little bit older documentation in order to avoid asking those borrowers to go digging out new documentation when they may be dealing with a disaster in their area. So it's very important to understand that most agencies and most lenders do offer some additional flexibilities to be able to assist borrowers in this time of disaster in their area. So you want to make sure that you're up to date on that information. And again, these are guideline flexibilities that Fannie Mae offers. So you always want to make sure that your lender also follows those or doesn't have any additional overlays. Now that we've discussed how to identify a disaster area, we've covered what a lender is required to warrant when delivering closed loans, and then we finished up with the different guidelines and inspection requirements that lenders may have in order to meet those warranties. It's important to understand all of these requirements in total so you can be better prepared to continue processing your loans if a disaster impacts your lending market. This concludes part 3 of this 3-part video series. For more tips, videos, and for a full list of courses offered by Campus Mortgage, please visit our website at www.campusmortgage.org. Thank you, and as always, make it a great day.